to Astrology Today with Jeff Harman. I'm Jeff's assistant, Ella. Thank you so much for joining us. So nice to see you all. Today, Jeff is going to share with us some uplifting energies that he's seeing in the chart for the United States. Also, I wanted to let you know that Jeff is going to be on Coast to Coast AM radio coming up this February 1st at 10 p.m., from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m., so for 2 hours. And Jeff is going to tap into current events there. He's also going to tap into UFO and extraterrestrial phenomena. I am so stoked about this show, about listening to this show. It really should be quite good and interesting. So we hope you'll get a chance to listen as well if you're able. But for today, Jeff's going to go into our current events. So take it away, Jeff.
So, there's a lot of current events. There always is. Again, we've had more crazy stuff going on with shootings, which is horrible. I think the other thing we've heard, hey, the Earth's core, they say, is now magnetically spinning backwards. And I was wondering why I was dizzy. So maybe that's what's doing it. But in any event.
That's the reason?
That's the reason. I knew I was dizzy for something. But this kind of thing is very interesting about that. I've heard that this has happened before. And people say, well, how do they know? I know that with magnetometers, they can measure things from satellites. So apparently, I haven't talked to anybody who's doing it, but that I know that I've heard that. And that's likely how they can detect this thing. A lot of folks have wondered, will the Earth ever stop spinning in the direction it's in reverse? And I hear that that's happened before too. It might not be a bad idea if it turned around and went the other way. Maybe we can unwind some of this insanity we've been in. But
that'd be pretty cool, actually.
Back it all up in reverse time and start over. We'll do it. We'll do this again a better way. So, But anyways, time waits for no one. That's for sure. So one of the other things going on too is we see the political games, and I've noticed, McCarthy is really actually kind of surprised me a little bit, where he's come back and he's really made some changes. Now, again, you're going to see the polarizations between the two parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. But I think it's a very interesting phenomena that kind of parallels what I'm seeing in the astrology. This is a year, I've been warning that I really think this next 2 years, when you add up the bean counting of everything that's going on and the big energies, the Saturn going over the United States moon, very solemn time. A lot of people I've been speaking to in real estate and banking, they're very worried about the economic outlook. And I do think we're going to see a huge tightening of the belt. I mean, literally, they said our economy, and there's varying opinions on this, but may have grown only 1% the last couple of years, where China, even though it's been shut down, has grown like 3%. And so the growth and the inflation, I think, is a lot worse than they're admitting to. And this would parallel the astrology. What I'm concerned about also, too, is the primary directed Mars that's going over the United States moon between now and the late fall, early winter of next year, or this year, not next year, this year, 2023. So that's a big deal. I really don't like what I'm seeing there. And also in 2024. So we've got a lot of powerful energies here that really show they're going to be punching away at anything they can here, raising the inflation, tightening the money. So I hope it's better than we think. The good news, and this is why I like to, one of the reasons I want to do the update today, is I got looking and said, okay, the Nadi astrology shows this 12-year Jupiter progression that just began in the first week of January of 2023, this month. And then I thought, well, God, there's got to be some more saving graces here in light of the things I just mentioned. And there is a very powerful Jupiter trining the United States sun that actually ends up, and it's going to really start to come in orb while all this other horrific stuff is in orb. That happens right in 2025. Now, what's interesting is nothing happens in isolation. And, again, astrology is really the study of the tapestry of energies. It's not necessarily predicting the future. It just shows energy, kind of, if you will, vectors that are coming in. One of the coolest things in physics, if you've ever studied physics, is vectors. It's very similar to vehicles on a road, all heading at different velocities. So you look at all these converging energies. And what I like here is, even though I think we're going to see a continuing clash here between the globalists and the nationalists, and I think the United States is probably the one that's in the crosshairs the most, it leans towards, we might have some divine saving grace blessing the good old US of A here, even though we're in a very challenging time. And, many people have been listening to positive thinkers. Tony Robbins has been out with a really cool class that he's let everybody hear for free. And, I've always been a fan of positive thinking. I remember 40 years ago, Tony's just a little bit younger than I am. And I've always enjoyed listening to various different positive thinkers because, one thing that will always remain, and we have to remember this, is we are truly spiritual beings having a physical experience. We're not robots. We're not perfunctory little machines, and we're never going to be. We're human beings. We're life. And one of the things I like about positive thinkers is no matter who you listen to, they always remind us of that. They're making us check in with how we think. And I think one of the most coolest things about Nadi and Vedic astrology and the ancient Egyptian and Chaldean lore is they talk about the third eye chakra. We emit elementals out into our auric field. And many people may have heard of physiognomy. Physiognomy is how you look, right? You can see it. Some people are angry, right? Other people are happy. So our physiognomy is kind of our body language, just another way to look at that. And I think in these times, which has been so hard for us all, and so many clients I speak to, they're all like, oh my God, can it get worse? We've been through COVID, so much depression, the attack of the border, the attack of the money, the economy. And, we have to remind ourselves, no matter how bad it gets, we always survive. And that's, why I wanted to do this podcast today is because there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I really think the United States had a blessing upon it. I've been doing a lot of studies on that, of the mysteries and the secret societies that were really behind some of the founding fathers. And, the French were definitely involved, but I also find that not only the Masons, which is the arch enemy of other religions for some reason, and I know certain people don't like the Masons, but you can't read the Constitution and you can't read the Bill of Rights and not go, wow, somebody was interested in the betterment of humanity, So, there's no greater document, I think, that's ever been created than the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And I really encourage people to read that, because if you want some positive thinking, that one right there gives it to you. And why I wanted to bring this up is because, astrology always sounds like it's doom and gloom, right? The end of the world. What's next? And we have to remember, and this is one of the things I think is most important, we have begun a new era. Like, people say to me, well, geez, Jeff, what does the astrology say? I think we began a new era. And George Washington in 1762, fighting for the British against the French Indian War, really experienced the Industrial Revolution being begun. Why? Because Jupiter and Saturn joined in a fire trine. That didn't happen. Well, these cycles only happen about every 1,000 years and every approximately quarter of a millennia. You could say somewhere between 240 and 250 years, Jupiter and Saturn rejoin in these elements called earth, air, fire, and water. Well, why is that significant? Because in January of 2012, it was December 21st, the winter solstice of 2020, we had a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction called a mutation conjunction. This is ushering in a new era. Now, January of 2020, we did have COVID. That was the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So I know this is a little confusing, but just stick with me. It's actually pretty simple. So the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of the winter solstice of 2020 is really the birth of a new era in society, in the world at large. Doesn't matter what country you live in. We have entered into what I would call almost like a psychozoic or extremely high-tech acceleration of technologies. And look at where we're at. I mean, never before. I mean, even most people who are older than 25 or 30 years old remember before smartphones. We remember before the internet was ubiquitous. Now, just try and imagine your life without an iPhone telling you where to go, or a droid, or, your text messages, or your email and shopping online and Amazon and all that. So the world has really changed, but it's going to change a lot more. Why? Elon Musk is absolutely right. AI is going to probably replace most of the perfunctory chores that we have in humanity going on right now. We're going to see restaurants. We're going to see, places of business and assembly of, mechanical things like on assembly lines. People are going to stop doing that type of work. You're going to see more and more and more artificial intelligence. And the world's changed, folks. It's not going to go back. This isn't something that's temporary. So what do we do with this information? I think, the globalists have seized on this and are trying to bring in global, communism, or you could say socialism at least. And the world has altered, and now I think it's even more important for us to recenter and redirect and refocus on what can we do. And I can say this, that humanity will never be replaced by artificial intelligence. It's never going to be replaced by a machine. Machines are here to serve us. And I think the despots who try and do that are going to find really quick that you take away humanity, it's not going to happen, because the divinity, the divine forces are hundreds of dimensions above all these lower forces down here, the dense forces. And this is an amalgam of good and evil down here. And I think where I'm going with all this is, I think in the next few years, from what I can see, definitely by 225, we're going to start to see a pendulum swing back to even out things. Because Jupiter, if you look at its glyph in astrology, it's the crescent of the moon over the cross. And when that trines the sun, which the sun is really the seed of creation, all these stars in the universe may be portals to the upper dimensions. And I believe that they are. And I think that's some really good news. So let's hope all that happens.
That's excellent news. That's excellent news. And you spoke a while ago about, or at the end of 2022, about the Jupiter coming in, the 12-year Jupiter. And I know even you were telling me in my chart about the 12 years of Jupiter that I've got going on now, started a couple years ago. And it definitely was a shift that happened for me when it first started. So I really believe in that, the power of all of the planets, but we're talking about the power of Jupiter for sure.
Well, you're bringing up a really good thing, because a lot of people always say to me, does astrology predict the future? No, the ancient astrology, I don't think ever said it predicted the future. What it showed was the divine forces at play in the dense lower worlds of spiritual manifestation into the physical plane. And, I always love to show that diagram. I've showed it many times. I won't show it again, but for right now, I'll just talk about it. And that is, they literally say this particular dimension, Earth at least, is where spirit becomes manifest in the duality world, or the duality dimensions of good and evil and all points in between. And, what I like about looking at it from this standpoint is, speaking of a positive thinker, Napoleon Hill, a lot of you may have heard of him. He wrote wrote the book Think and Grow Rich, and he was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie to write about what made people successful. Like, he analyzed all these different real, creators of the Industrial Revolution, Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, on and on and on, all these different people, Thomas Edison. And he said the one ubiquitous thing that he saw with all of them was a spirit of harmony and a spirit of, no matter what happened, they just kept going. And that is, I think, the real blessing of creation in itself, is the life force energy. AI, if the battery runs out or the programming's not there, it's not going to happen. We keep getting up every day. If you look at a human being, we all fall down, we get bruised or whatever. Go kick your car sometime and see if that heals itself. It doesn't. So there's a force here in life and a spirit that most successful people have, that they just keep getting up. I mean, look at the stuff you've gone through, Ella, and the stuff, collectively. I mean, we all get punched, and you just keep going.
We do. And we do keep getting up every day. And that's just the spirit. Like, sometimes when I get up, I say, wow, I'm here. I'm still here. I'm waking up. I'm still going. I'm still going. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, that's the spirit that created this country. And it's the spirit that'll keep this country, is you just don't give up. Yeah. And again, I have to say, I was a little skeptical of McCarthy, but I was actually impressed with his stick-to-itness, even though they rip on him and all that. But I watched him in a news conference the other day, and, he's actually, I think he's showing some real promise here, because honesty and integrity always wins. And, that brings up a video that we did not too long ago, a podcast about karma. My observation of Nadi astrology is that astrology isn't predicting the future. It's actually showing the merits and demerits of the soul. So in other words, the angelic forces that seem to tie us into this embryo when we're conceived, and then when the spirit is actually attached when we're born, we exit the womb, seems to really be a much more divine act than we'll ever truly know, because the heavens, or the positions of the matrix we call astrology, which is really an angelic matrix, it seems to fit the path of the soul in its evolution in incarnation, which is pretty deep stuff when you think about that, because I see the solar system's like a multi-dimensional switch. Here's a good example. Many people will get astrology readings. They'll say, well, you've got a debilitated whatever, a planet that's debilitated or a planet that's exalted. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that the planets can take on these multi-dimensional roles. Jupiter can be really bad in your chart. It can also be really strong. It can also be aspected at all points in between. And every single place, you talk about a matrix. I always say, forget Trinity, Neo, and Morpheus. And this is it. So we're not looking at sun sign astrology anymore. When you get into the details of ancient Nadi astrology, it's kind of breathtaking that you're looking into the divine window of the soul in its journey in this incarnation. And I see it. You see people that are very dogmatically locked into what they think they believe, which is fine. That's your free will and right. And then you see other people who are just profound. I mean, they just keep on trucking. And you look at the chart and you go, oh my God, that's how it is. So we're really, truly in a matrix. And I guess I could close this by saying it does look really challenging for the United States over the next couple of years. And I think we're going to see, again, more of the clash of the titans and the globalists trying to bankrupt the country and doing some pretty crazy things. But on the other hand, I see the counterbalances of forces of the divine actually coming through. I always tell people, when you really look at the winning of the Revolutionary War, it really did look like they would never win up against England, and they did. And really what it was is, again, another simple war of freedom versus fascism, or you could say tyranny versus the freedom of humanity. So it gives me a little hope to see what I'm seeing here. It doesn't mean that it's going to be without a little bit of a roller coaster ride, but it's promising. I'll say that.
Excellent.
I'll drink coffee to that.
I'll drink to that. Here, I'll drink water to that.
All right. I'd clink you, but you're too far away.
Yeah. We got to do something about that. Maybe we're going to do something about that at some point.
Yeah, that's right. We're working on that. We
get this show going together.
That's right.
Working on it. Yeah. Exactly well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Please always leave your comments, questions, and thank you so much. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching.